Trump has blamed California Governor Gavin Newsom for the widespread havoc caused by the California wildfires. 5 people are dead and more than 1,100 buildings have been destroyed by out-of-control wildfires burning around Los Angeles. Trump posted to his platform Truth Social, Governor Newsom, I gotta keep this clean. Governor Newsom, misspelling intended, refused to sign the water restoration declaration that would have allowed millions of gallons of water to flow daily into many parts of California, including the areas that are currently burning in a virtually apocalyptic way. He wanted to protect an essentially worthless fish called a smelt. He is to blame for this. In fact, Trump warned about this sacrifice in California, water for this fish, the smelt, back when he did the Joe Rogan podcast weeks before the election.
In order to protect a tiny little fish, the water up north gets routed into the Pacific Ocean. Millions and millions of gallons of water gets poured.
Now, Newsom's spokesperson has hit back accusing Trump of politicizing the fires. But, Joe, I mean, doesn't the left already do that? I mean, all this talk about climate change being responsible for it.
I thought the time to talk about it was now. No, this is the time to talk about it. Didn't the fire hydrants actually run out of water?
They did. They did. Yes.
How does that happen?
Yeah.
Like, I know California's already run out of power multiple times. There's constant brownouts. But again, if a fire hydrant runs out of water, that seems to me a pretty, that is as big a failure of government service as you can possibly get. I mean, I don't know much about firefighting, but I do know that the one thing a fire hydrant is meant to have in it is water. And I would not have believed Trump's crazy story about the fish, were it not, of course, that the exact same thing is being foisted, it was tried to be foisted on the Albanese government here with the Morgian skate in beautiful Strawn in Macquarie Harbour in Tasmania, where they were actually, the left were actually, the Greens and the environmentalists were pushing for the entire salmon farming industry to be shut down to save some weird little stingray thing that lives at the bottom of Macquarie Harbour and for some reason refuses to travel, kind of like Melburnians. but again, you'd think, no, Trump's just tripping. There's no way this could actually be serious. And yet you see the same thing being played out here. And Albo has stood up to them and said, absolutely no way. But the loony left has this same crazy, the environmental loony left has this same crazy ideas here that they're trying to foist on workers in Tasmania.
Although in Australia, that's happening on the hard fringe left. In California, it's happening among the governing party, the Democrats. So you've got this incredibly popular Californian governor who is probably...
Not for long,
probably not now. Today has been a real, and the last couple of days have been a real turning point. But it seems like serious mismanagement, because what Trump was saying is that there was a huge amount of water that would have been available for them to flow from Canada, and decisions that Gavin Newsom made to protect a fish in order to and to stop a dam ended up leading to this situation that we're seeing right now.
Trump had organised for, basically a presidential order to have this water come down from Northern California, which would have helped loads of farmers, let alone, really help the area that is now on fire around LA and Santa Monica and right up to Pacific Palisades as well. So, and yet you see that the governor, he was boasting about the fact that he'd sort of saved this fish and closed this dam down. And to anyone who's got a rudimentary knowledge of firefighting, you need water.
That was certainly my understanding. Maybe times have changed.
But the Santa Ana winds always come in around the winter there, and they've been very hot, and that's why and it's been very dry, and that's why there's this catastrophic situation in California. But he should know that. But
also, just again, wait, and there's the recurring theme here, good on the rule of 3, suddenly when your asylum seekers are in Acapulco, people are starting to notice it. Suddenly when they're being bussed to Martha's Vineyard, where the rich love to play and eat and greet and meet, suddenly, now we have to do something. And you can guarantee that all these Hollywood celebrities who would have been the biggest environmental champions You know, the first they'll blame it all on climate change, but I'm sure there was a fact there. But again, let's just see how much they care about this fish now that their beautiful multi-million-dollar mansions are burning to the ground.
Yeah, I don't think the poor smelter's going to get much of a look in with all the Hollywood elite anymore. I'll tell you something else, that LA County, which is obviously the district where these horrific fires are taking place, they've been mocked for focusing on diversity, equity and inclusion rather than, you know, saving lives.
Our focus is to teach our new employees for them to understand cultural competency, identify implicit and unconscious bias, and be aware of the importance of us having a diverse and inclusive workforce.
You know, Louise, voters here in Australia hate this. I think they would hate it in America as well, watching these homes burn to the ground. I can't imagine the amount of outrage it will cause people to think the focus in these firefighting authorities has been having more diverse firefighters in the force.
Well, that's right. And this program was introduced 3 years ago. So just sort of calculate how much money and time and effort's been put into this diversity program. Whereas we talked about lack of water in the fire hydrants, also there hasn't been enough fireys on standby to actually attend the fires themselves. And if you think about being a firefighter per se, naturally it's an inclusive job. Everyone works together to put out fires, and their only goal is to put out fires and save lives. Probably save lives first, I would say.
You would hope.
Yes, absolutely. Or, you know, try and save a building and so forth. But the fact that any hesitation in a situation like that, because they're worried about perhaps not being appropriate to another fiery, or they're not diverse enough in their unit, which is insanity. We should not be putting that ahead of people's lives.
I think we've seen far too often recently how DEI has completely damaged institutions.
That's right. At best, it's an utter waste of time and a distraction. And again, it is this sort of stuff. It is destroying not just these kind of institutions, but it's destroying the left that is promoting these things. Again, DEI destroyed the Democrats. It literally just destroyed the entire Democratic Party.
Are you saying that Kamala Harris was a DEI pick?
I don't have to. Joe Biden said it. Joe Biden actually said, and this is why it is so completely and utterly cooked, right? But Joe Biden said that he would appoint a black woman as his vice president. Why would you even say that? Like, as though that would automatically make... I mean, I can't think of anything more racist and sexist than say, oh, that will automatically make her more qualified? Or do you just mean that will automatically bring in all the female and black votes because they all think the same?
And the ultimate insult for the person, because they're just the token female black candidate.
So supportive of that was the criteria he had for picking his VP. Then when it actually came time for her to have a crack at the top job, he stood in her way and refused to go. So an old white man stopped this black female vice president from actually coming anywhere near his job in remotely a timely fashion, which would have been disastrous anyway. And then, of course, he hangs on so long that the Democratic Party, despite being called the Democratic Party, cannot have a democratic process and is stuck with this DEI pick, who it turns out is utterly incompetent and cannot string a sentence together. And there would have been countless women and countless black people who would have been far better candidates. Or you could have just, I don't know, selected them on merit or had them actually fight for their role in the primary. Who would have thought? Crazy. So again, it has literally destroyed it. But also the talking about this stuff and teaching critical race theory in schools and everything, we are seeing particularly among, you know, working class, middle American communities that are actually doing it tough and going backwards. Every time the left starts talking about this crap, they go, you're not listening to me, you don't understand what I'm going through, we're voting for the other guy. And you see it time and time and time again. We see it in Australia as well, where working class people are turning increasingly to parties like One Nation, where they feel like at least Pauline Hanson speaks a language they can understand or is talking about issues that they are worried about. And as soon as, you know, like again, the Morgian skate. You've got green urban groups. You've got, you know, groups like, you know, the Australia Institute doing polls of mainland Australians about whether this fish needs to be saved at the cost of hundreds, if not thousands, of working class jobs. The people who are opposing this is the Australian Workers Union. These salmon farming the salmon industry jobs, they are all blue-collar jobs. They are all working people. We're not talking about the rich, salmon capitalists smoking their cigars lit up by $100 bills. This is the left turning on the working class again, and people absolutely hate it. And again, it is tearing apart the Americans as well. And when you see the firefighters doing that, and then you see those houses being burnt to the ground, it's not, it's not identity bias. They don't have to identify bias. They have to identify fires.
I know,
I think
exactly.
the phone call might have gotten a bit scratchy.
But Louise, how many black firefighters were on the ground to help rescue people in the last couple of days? That's what I'm sure people are really concerned about.
I'm sure it is, yes. Yes, that's right. And how many Latino and how many, Asians, it's not down to that. And also, I really feel this DEI training is a real insult to people who choose to be a firefighter. I mean, they're amongst the most bravest people in the world. You think about 9/11, how in awe we were of them after that. And the fact they're being force-fed this diversity training, I think is an absolute insult to them, because they're there to save lives. They're not there to be woke.
Well, meanwhile, outgoing US President Joe Biden made an awkward gaffe.
No.
Yeah, can you believe it?
I refuse to believe it.
I know, amazing.